Hi, and welcome to SOS Stories of Survivors. I'm your host, Serina Dansker, and it is my absolute pleasure and honor to welcome Donna Palomba. She is the founder of Jane Doe No More. Today, we were going to talk about advocacy for women who have been sexually assaulted. But more than that, Donna has turned people's pain into an amazing platform where people can share their journeys. And she's going to talk to us about this movement and how she's given survivors a voice and their dignity and a place where they can feel comfortable talking about their experience. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Donna. Thank you, Donna, for coming.
Thank you so much, Serena, for having me. It really is my pleasure.
I would love to just dive right in and ask you to share a little bit about your life before everything changed and what was normal for you back then.
Okay, so life right before the incident, it was 1993. My husband and I were married for 12 years at the time. We had two little ones, my daughter, our firstborn, and our son. And life was very busy. I was a partner in a marketing agency. My husband was busy in his family business with his three brothers, but life truly centered around the children, and life was good.
Wow. And so survivors often describe a moment as a dividing line, the moment of the trauma that takes place. And for you, can you take us, I mean, are you okay talking about
Yes, of
it?
course. Yes, of course. I'm very open about what happened. So it was actually September 11th, 1993. My husband was away for the very first time in our marriage. And it was a Friday night, the night before, when I had gone to work the day before and my children had gone to school. I picked them up. We went out to a children's concert and then out for pizza and came home around 9 o'clock. We were all exhausted, tucked them in, said their prayers, and I was fast asleep. And the next thing I remember, I heard footsteps. And we lived in a two-story colonial with wood stairs. And I immediately became concerned. It didn't sound like little children's bare feet, like one of them coming to join me in our bedroom. And I was sleeping on my stomach and I looked up, and a shadowy figure, a man with a covering over his head, entered the bedroom. And I had very little time to react. I screamed. He covered my mouth, cranked my arm behind my back, and said, "If you don't cooperate, you're going to get hurt." And then I was coming to my senses and realized if I screamed, the children were the ones that would hear.
Yeah.
So I stayed quiet. He put a pillowcase over my head. He bound my eyes and tied my wrists behind my back. So I was completely bound. And he cut my clothing and he raped me. And he flipped me back over. And at one point, I felt the cylinder, the barrel of a gun in my mouth. And he said, he threatened me. And I saw my life flash before my eyes and I thought this was it. And I pictured my children finding me the next morning.
Mm.
He moved the gun to my temple and said, and I said out loud, I mean, I thought this was it. And I said out loud to God, "Please absolve me of all my sins." And I waited. And finally, he actually flipped me back over, put the gun in my back, and said, "If you call the pigs," his words, "I'm going to come back and kill you." And it was at that moment that I realized he might let me live. And I did anything I could to will him down those stairs. I said, "Listen, I'll never tell a soul. This is between you and me. I could never identify you." And miraculously, I heard him walk down the stairs.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
And of course, my first thoughts were of my children. I could not get to them quick enough, but I was disoriented on the bed. I was still bound. I was able to break free from the ties. I slipped one hand through and took the pillowcase off and ran down, and both of my children were untouched. And honestly, Serina, I just knelt down and sobbed and thanked God. And what I felt in that moment was gratitude that I had survived and my children were just precious and just
Yeah.
untouched. And I knew in that moment that we would be okay. I, thought, my goodness, this horrific thing happened, but I was able to survive it, and the children were untouched. It was the best of a very awful situation.
Wow, how fortunate that was that he actually just left. He came, got what he needed, and just left, and your kids were okay.
Exactly. It was something I could never have dreamed of. It was like, your worst nightmare. I was in shock, and now the children were okay. So now I wanted to get help. He had cut the phone line, so I had to run to a neighbor's. This was 1993.
My
I didn't
goodness,
have a cell phone. Yeah.
no, of course.
So I was like, oh my gosh, I can't have no way of communicating with outside world. So I made a really tough decision to leave my children, but it was the only way to get help. I made sure they were still fine. They were settled in. I
The
had
middle
my
of the night, right?
It was in the middle of the night. It was like the wee hours of the morning. It was like 2 o'clock or something like that.
Mm.
Ran to a neighbor's. He took one look at me. I still had nylons hanging from my neck. And he's like, what happened? I said, John's not home. I've been attacked. The kids are up there. I'm frightened. And I said, the perpetrator told me not to call the police. He'd kill me. The neighbor immediately picked up the phone, dialed 911. He went up to the house to protect the children. He stayed in front of the house until the police arrived, just to have someone be there. And
Mhm.
I told the police what happened. A police officer met me there. Before that, I was able to use the working phone at my neighbor's to call family, and they said, we'll be right over. And the officer there, I was following him. He asked me if I had a key. I said, yes, here it is. And I was following him, and he said I had to stay there. And I said, please, my children are up at the house by themselves. I don't want them to be frightened. Can I please come with you? He said, no, you need to wait here. And I obeyed. No one came for me, Serina. The separation anxiety was off the charts. I grabbed a knife from the drawer in my neighbor's home and ran back up by myself. And it was like 5 houses away.
Right.
By the time I got there, I saw siren, the lights, police lights were there, and officers were on the scene. Family members started to arrive. I was just by that time like so drained, and just my only thoughts were of my
Right?
children.
Yeah, you were in shock
Yeah,
too. I
yeah.
can imagine that.
Yes, and so I was able to go. They let me roam freely, as they let other family members roam freely, and I checked the kids, and they remained asleep. It was a miracle. But I thought I had done everything right that night. I went to the hospital. By that time, my eye was throbbing. Turned out I had a scratched cornea. My eye was patched. There were lacerations on my wrist that were noted, and a sex crimes kit was conducted, and DNA for the perpetrator was found.
God.
And yeah, it was hard to even explain what that night was like.
Wow. That's just crazy. And your husband, were you able to reach him and let him know what happened?
I did not want to. He was out of state in Colorado at a friend's wedding. We had all planned to go, but because of business reasons, I couldn't go. So at any rate, I had told his brothers, I said, we're not going to tell John until he comes home. What good could it do for him to know this 1,000 miles away, and then, have to deal with that without anyone there to comfort him and let him know that I'm okay and the kids are fine. And so we broke the news to him the next day, and needless to say, he was devastated. He's a kind of guy that you would imagine a good family man, and protective, and he could not imagine that the one time he was away, that someone would come and do harm to his family. But I was pulling my family through this. am a strong person with a strong faith. And I said, John, I'm okay. I'm okay. I was back to work within a few days. And of course, you live differently. We had deadbolts and alarms installed. And of course, it was very difficult for me to sleep in that house and the sounds and all of that. But I was getting through, and I literally was pulling my family through when 1 month after the crime, the lieutenant that was handling my case put me in a small interrogation room at the police department and sat me down. He had a tape recorder on his desk. Back then it was reel to reel. And he pressed play and record, took out a little white piece of paper and began reading me my Miranda rights.
What?
Yeah. You have the right to remain. I looked at him and I said, what are you doing? He said, this is the way I'm going to handle it. I said, handle what? What are you talking about? He said, why don't you tell me what really happened that night? And I looked at him and I said, I told the police that were there that night, I told you everything I could possibly remember from that night. And he went on and on. And of course, had I known then what I know now, I would never have taken that re-victimization, that emotional trauma heaped up on me over and over. But I didn't know better. And I sat there for an hour while he told me he had rock solid evidence that I purposefully lied to the police and that I had to come clean. He told me I had everything to lose, and he held up his hand. He said, your children, your husband, your career, your reputation, unless you tell me right now what happened.
Oh my God.
I begged him, I said, please, I've done nothing but tell the truth. We have countless interviews and photographs that prove you were lying. I said, show them to me. I can explain anything.
Right.
All to no avail. Finally, at the end, I was crying and I looked at him and I said, what could you be thinking of doing this to me?
Right.
He looked at his watch and said, I'm thinking of what I'm going to have for lunch.
What
Yeah.
a bastard.
Yeah.
I mean, really?
Oh, it was, I thought I was in an alternate reality. I'm like, this cannot be real. And at the end, when I had nothing left to say, I was just sitting there and afraid he was going to arrest me. He said to me, I'll tell you what, I will let you leave under the condition that you come back here this afternoon. You tell me what really happened. This tape goes in the desk and I close the case. Or I will find you, I will arrest you, and your picture will be in tomorrow's paper. I was like, oh my gosh, I didn't know what to do. And I left there feeling worse. He said to me, I have 27 cases on my desk, and one way or another, this case is getting closed today. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, that's crazy.
It was absolutely crazy. I was thrown into a world I knew absolutely nothing about. I was always raised to, have the utmost respect for law enforcement, that they're there to protect and serve, and they're there to help you in your time of need. And it was just incredibly damaging and devastating. I could remember it was in October, like we're in October now. It was an October day, and I had a light raincoat on. I went to my parents' house, and I was in such a state, I couldn't even remove my coat. And my husband and my father went to that police station and demanded to see this lieutenant. They
What?
were told her story is full of holes, and yes, there is the threat of her arrest. Mhm. So
I can't
they
even
came back and
imagine.
we're just as dumbfounded. We're like, what is going on?
Right.
So truly, that is what started it all, Serena. And I had to really learn so much more about what types of stigmas are associated with these types of crimes. And I was devastated for a long time. I couldn't eat or sleep. I couldn't believe that not only that the horrific night had happened, that an armed mass intruder broke into our home, but then that the police were attacking. This lieutenant attacked me. We reported it to his superior, all to no avail. We actually had to get legal help. We demanded that an internal affairs investigation be conducted, which was a joke. It took a year, and it came back congratulating the officers on a thorough investigation. The only thing he was reprimanded for was he was unable to produce a working copy of the tape because apparently he set it to the wrong switch and it didn't record.
Oh, what an asshole. I'm sorry. Oh my
Seriously,
God.
it's just nuts. And so our attorney, I said, we can't let this ride like this, because what I learned during that time was that most victims are under the age of 21, and most don't report, and you could
No,
see why.
because you're afraid
Yeah,
that you're going to be blamed for it yourself. I mean, look, I grew up in the '80s, and girls that were victims of sexual assault or abuse or rape or any of that stuff was like, well, you were wearing really short shorts, or what were you wearing, or what did you do? How did you look at that guy? Did you ask for it?
right.
And so we were always taught, you don't say anything because you're going to be the one that's going to be in the newspaper.
And it's so ridiculous. The victim blaming, it's still true to this day in many cases. And that's why most victims don't report. And of course, I learned that most victims are under the age of 21, and that they're suffering in devastating silence because of this. And it's just so incredibly harmful. So we decided to sue law enforcement.
Good.
I had nothing but the truth on my side, and my attorney was wonderful. She has since passed away, but she was like, Donna, this is going to be very difficult. When you sue law enforcement, you in fact sue the city, the entire city, because they're city employees. It took 7 years to go to trial.
Wow.
7 years. They tried to stop me at every turn, but in that time, I reached out to the best and the brightest people that I knew. I reached out to Dr. Henry Lee, who resampled the DNA in my case because I didn't trust anything at that point that they had. And I actually created a 12-point list of things that need to occur in crimes like this, and the actions that should be taken by first responders, law enforcement. And the first one is that every victim should be treated with dignity and respect.
Absolutely.
That is just so critically important. And the training that needs to occur, which these officers were supposedly trained, they headed up the sexual crimes unit. It was incredible to me. So to be trauma informed, to understand that no victim of a trauma like this is going to act in a way that you can predict. Some may be quiet, some might be screaming, some might be hysterical. And that does not mean that they're not truthful. And so helping them put their preconceived notions aside. At any rate, after 7 years, we finally did go to trial. Um, and it was a month-long trial. These officers all covered for one another.
Of course they.
In fact, one of the most devastating things, one officer on the scene that night wrote in his report, she's wearing the nylons around her neck and wrist as if they were a stage prop.
Wow.
I had nylons that I had been bound with on my wrist and neck, and I didn't even realize I had them on. But when I had them on when I ran to my neighbors, at the neighbors, when I talked to the officer there on the call, he said, do not wash, do not remove anything. And
You can get fingerprints and everything. Yeah.
I simply did what I was told.
Right.
They thought it was odd that on that call, when I was talking about the perpetrator, I said, the gentleman that did this to me, I use the word gentleman. I was an executive in marketing. That I'm a business professional, and I'm in a state of shock. So they're scrutinizing everything I did and said, and the way I looked. It was absolutely insane. But
It,
officer after officer testified until finally Dr. Henry Lee took the stand, and he testified about the proper handling of a crime scene, how the entire perimeter of the home should have been cordoned off,
right.
and how fingerprints and photographs should have been taken, none of which were done.
Oh my
And
God.
then Dr. David Johnson, who I sought treatment from at Yale Post Traumatic Stress Center, talked about the fact that I was a strong person and that I was back to work and well on my way to healing. And that second attack at the Waterbury Police Department by that lieutenant, a place where I thought was another safe harbor, just like your home and when you're in your bedroom. And that second attack was in many ways more damaging than the rape itself.
Oh my
And
God.
then Neil O'Leary, who was in law enforcement at the Waterbury Police Department, the same department with these other men, took the stand and he testified. He was raising in the ranks. I believe he was deputy chief at the time. And he said there was not one shred of evidence to prove I had done anything but tell the truth. And these officers were found negligent. And
That is unbelievable that they actually found them negligent.
yeah, it truly is. After all that,
Yeah.
that they were found negligent. It was the beginning of an amazing turnaround of events, and Neil O'Leary became chief of police. And this was in 2001. The trial ended in 2001. In 2004, now we knew the perpetrator was out there. This happened in 1993.
Right.
And 11 years we had no idea who he was. In 2004, a man in our community attacked a coworker, and he attempted to sexually assault her. She was able to break free, but he was going to be arrested for unlawful restraint in that case. And Chief O'Leary asked the man, John Regan, for a voluntary DNA sample, and a swab of saliva was taken. And we would find out later, 2 months later, it was a perfect match to the DNA in my case.
Wow. How lucky was that?
Yeah, it was unbelievable. But his name was John Regan. He was thought to be a happily married church-going father of three who had grown up with my husband since kindergarten. They
No.
played football together in high school. We had gone to each other's weddings. The betrayal, my poor husband, I mean, it was unthinkable that this man did this.
So
It
he
really
he
was.
knew you. He knew where you lived,
Yeah.
and
Yes, yes. And it just was so shocking. But here we had irrefutable DNA evidence. It was no longer a he said, it was irrefutable. I would have never in a million years dreamed it could have been him. Um, and he couldn't be arrested for rape because of a statute of limitations that had run out 5 years prior.
oh my God.
Yep. So he was arrested for kidnapping because that had no statute. And it was going to be difficult to prove. He came from a wealthy family. He was afforded the best attorneys that money could buy. He was out on bond, $350,000 bond for 1 year while we awaited trial. I didn't know if my husband was going to find him and kill him, or if John Regan, would find me and kill me, as he threatened to multiple times that night. And so it was a really scary time. We never made it to trial because John Regan crossed state lines and went to Saratoga Springs High School parking lot seeking his next victim, which was a 17-year-old girl who was leaving track practice. And he had parked his van right next to her car. It was parked so close that she had to kind of shimmy to get to her driver door. He opened the sliding door of his van and grabbed her around the torso and the mouth and tried to pull her into his van. But
You,
thankfully, Lindsay is strong. She kicked and screamed and she broke free. He
wow.
told her to shut up, don't tell anyone. And he got back in his van and very calmly and started driving. But the coaches heard her cries. One of them jumped in his car. John Regan was already now on the streets of Saratoga, but the the coach found him and pulled him over. The police in Lindsay identified him. The van was taken into evidence, and the back seat had been pulled out. There was a tarp, a noose, a sedative, a syringe, a picture of me, pictures of the coworker, pictures of women he had been stalking in Connecticut and New York without their knowledge. That
Oh
is what it finally took to put him behind bars.
my God. Thank God. I
And
mean,
Lindsay, oh my gosh. And she's doing so good. She's a mom of 5 or 6 children now. I mean, it's a miracle that the way it all happened, truly. Gosh, it was just incredible.
that's
Just incredible.
it is. That's incredible that but he was a serial rapist.
Yes.
And
Yes.
oh my gosh. And to know then to your husband to know him
Yeah.
and that's balls. I really gotta say that. I
You know, it is. It is. It is. It's unbelievable that he could do something like this. He's obviously a very mentally ill individual, and we're so happy that he's not able to harm anyone else.
thank God for that. Now you are a strong woman, Donna. Oh my gosh. But I know that not every day is easy to get through and because you are so strong, I'm sure you were trying to help your husband deal with the fact of everything.
Yes.
Donna. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, we are married 44 years now, I guess, next week. So it's a long, long time. And we both love and respect each other so much. And we heal very differently. I obviously started Jane Doe No More. I'm very open about sharing. And my husband it's very difficult for him to hear the story, to talk about it. Um, you know that my story aired on Dateline a couple of times,
Wow.
and he was interviewed, and that took so much out of him. But he knew it was important to help others to
Yeah.
understand about these crimes, and he did it for me, and I'm so grateful. Um, but yeah, we're totally different in the way that we heal, but we respect and love each other very much, and we have a very strong marriage. So I'm very grateful.
And it's like yin and yang. You're strong in
Yeah.
areas that he's not, and he's strong in areas that you're not. That's like my husband and I. That's it's good to be that way, I
It
think.
is. It is. It really is. And, you know, our children are grown now, and they are doing so well, and that brings us joy. You know, what is that saying? You're only as happy as, and I know.
He's happy child,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Oh,
And so at any rate, I just, after that journey, I just had to do something. I
it's
could easily spiral downward, but I wanted to take that energy and I never even thought about these types of crimes until it happened. I mean, it's an ugly topic. Who wants to think or talk about that? But I learned so much, and we have to normalize the conversation around this in order to prevent these crimes from happening, in order to let other victims who are trying to grow to be survivors know that they're not alone and they're not to blame. They shouldn't bear the shame that unfortunately society often heaps on them. And so I had to do more. And my husband, let me, he supports Jane Doe No More, but he does it from afar. He can't be there when I do my speaking or anything like that, but that's okay, because he knows that we're helping people, and that's what's the most important thing.
that is so amazing that you went from personal survival and getting through everything you went through to public advocacy. And so, what was the spark that led you to create Jane Doe No More? What?
It was the experience and the crazy things that happened, like the fact that there's DNA evidence and he can't be arrested for the crime he committed. So the first year that I started Jane Doe No More, I went to Hartford to advocate, and I talked to legislators and explained that our laws need to keep up with the science that is now available and that this is irrefutable evidence. And I'm so happy to say that in 2007, M. Jody Rell, the governor at the time, Governor Rell came to the Waterbury Police Department, the very building where I was re-victimized, and with me by her side, she signed into law the removal of the statute of limitations on sex crimes with DNA in Connecticut.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Isn't it?
Wow.
Yeah.
That I'm getting teary from it. I think that's so awesome.
Yeah, it was a great, great day, and it's a great thing for survivors from 2007 going forward here in Connecticut. It wasn't retroactive, but I can tell you that by some miracle, John Regan finished his sentence in New York State. He was supposed to finish it in Connecticut, but he finished it in New York State early, which initially I was like, so I couldn't believe he was getting out. However, New York has something called civil management law, which Connecticut does not have. And it's for the worst of the worst offenders. Probably only 3% fall in this category. That even though they have finished their sentence, if they can be held if a jury, there's a trial, and if they are found to have a mental abnormality and likely to reoffend if they're set free. And that's exactly, we went through that process. And during COVID, I actually testified at the trial, and other victims were found. Several of us testified, and a jury of 12 heard testimony from survivors, testimony from medical professionals, and they determined that, in fact, he did have a mental abnormality, and if he were to be released, he would likely reoffend. And so he's confined in that system to this day.
Thank God. Good.
Yes, yes.
That's what they need. I mean, he should not be set free. That's a monster right there.
Yeah, yeah. And it thankfully, the jury recognized that, this man would be a danger if he were let out. And so I'm very grateful to New York State for that law. I'm grateful to the jurors and everyone who did, and those brave victims who testified too. So,
Wow. So let's talk about the name Jane Doe No More.
yeah.
What does that symbolize for you?
So Jane Doe, and even the logo, the Jane Doe is typewriter type, if you would, the Jane, and then the no more is in script. It's actually my handwriting, because I was Jane Doe in newspapers and medical reports, and that's typical with sex crime victims. But it also, I can understand it shields them. They have anonymity, but at the same time, people that read about these types of things, they read Jane Doe. It's a faceless, nameless victim that they cannot relate to, and hence no more. I should not have to hide my identity. I
Right.
have done nothing wrong.
Yes.
And, just having gone through what I did, I wanted to say no more.
Yeah.
No more blame, no more shame, no more fear. So, yeah.
You are a badass. I love it. That is so amazing. You are blazing trails.
Oh, I'm trying, but we have an amazing team, Serina. I started Jane Doe No More to improve the way society responds to victims of sexual crimes, because I knew how crazy it is that you not only, you're a victim of a crime, but then you have to fight your way and overcome all these barriers just for people to believe you and take you seriously. So that's how it started out. And I shared my story, and it's unbelievable how many others, since I've shared my story, will come forward. And I can't even tell you how many older women will just come up to me and hold my hand and say, "We all have stories. Thank you for what you do." And men too. We can't forget about the men. And so we started the Survivor Speak program, where survivors of sexual crimes work with professional coaches, and we help them to articulate their story. And that many of them just feel empowered and feel like they're not alone, and it becomes part of their healing process. And it's just so inspiring to see and to hear them speak and find their voice, and it's incredible. And then we pay it forward by educating others in the schools. in the communities. I mean, everyone should hear this message
Yeah,
because there's no such thing as not in my neighborhood. This is a global epidemic. It
it,
truly is.
it really does. And you're changing lives. You're bringing awareness to something that, like mental health issues,
Yeah,
people just didn't talk about.
right.
And that's amazing. What do you, I mean, you've started this whole nonprofit. You've written a book as well, right?
Yes, I worked with an investigative journalist, M. William Phelps, and we together wrote the book, Jane Doe No More. He tackles it each chapter from an investigative standpoint, and then I put my comments at the end of each chapter from a victim growing to be a survivor's standpoint. And there's, oh gosh, I just shared just quite a bit, but not, there's all kinds of twists and turns throughout that, even more in the book. And it's wonderful because a lot of professors will use it as in their victimology classes, and then I'll come in and talk to the class, and it's so cool to actually see these students that are interested in becoming law enforcement officers or social workers, and helping them to understand the trauma of sexual crimes, and how important it is as a first responder, as someone who interacts with that victim at that point. Everything matters: your eye contact, your body language, the way you speak to them. And we used to say start by believing, but for law enforcement, I get it, they have to get the facts and everything, but at least start by supporting. And
Yes.
even if you have questions in your mind, like, oh, that doesn't sound right, do not make it appear that way. Start by supporting, and look that victim in the eye, build a trusting relationship. And it's only going to benefit you because they're going to be more forthcoming. So if you can build that trust, they will remember things more, and they will work with you to hopefully solve that case.
That's incredible. Now that's from the law enforcement standpoint. Now what about like high school students or
Yeah.
young people? How do we protect them or educate them or on that?
Yeah, I think it needs to be done cautiously, and it needs to be in age appropriate language. But we have a few programs. We have something called Safety for Me, which we partner with Drew Serrano and East Coast Training Systems, and we've been partners since 2009. The Safety for Me program is fairly new for us. We want to start in the earlier grades, and this is for ages 5 through 11, where
Good.
we talk to them. It's a shorter program, but we talk to them about using your power voice, about trusting your gut. How,
Mm,
if something just doesn't seem right, and about how to be aware if someone approaches you, because these perpetrators are so manipulative. They
which
can, they lure you with
can't help
presents, or
you. Yes. You see all of that on TV.
yeah, and it's crazy out there. So we, again, we're walking that fine line. We don't want to scare them, but we want to prepare them and alert them, and to stay, within groups and all those kind of safety things. And then we have something called our Safe Student Initiative, which begins in middle school. And we do it all the way through college, at talking to students, getting them to engage in crucial conversations about healthy relationships, about in the older grades, about consent, and rape culture, and how you can be a part of changing things, and how you can actually become an active bystander if you see something, how to intervene safely. Like, you can delegate, you can go find not some person of authority and say, I think something's happening over there. How we can all work together to create a safer world and look out for one another.
Wouldn't that be something, right?
We need more of that, Serena.
Oh my
We can't rely on others. We have to work. The good people have to stand up and really work together to create meaningful change.
You do. I remember when my kids were little, we sing this song called, "Hey, don't touch me there. This is my no-no square." You
Yeah. Oh, I never heard that one. But yeah, no, we absolutely talk about, safe touch and unsafe touch, and the bathing suit area. We really need to instill this in these kids, because unfortunately, and this is just reality, of the survivors who have gone through our program, our Survivor Speak program, there's over 70 of us now. Most are victims of child sexual abuse
I can
in
see.
the home by someone they loved and trusted. And, for so many, it's like, how could that be? It is.
It's
And
it's
many,
an
many of our men that in our on our team are victims of child sexual abuse by a person in authority,
of
a
course.
catechism teacher. It
Boy Scouts sometimes,
exactly
or even a teacher in a school. A lot of times, teachers in
in
schools.
every profession there are unfortunately these perpetrators.
Oh my gosh. So, how do you support survivors in reclaiming their voices and their identities? And I know we talked a little bit about that, how you have them go through coaches and things like that. But um, how can we get the public to, I guess, better understand how about survivors and their healing?
Yeah, I think, our website, janedon'tknowmore.org, is full of different resources. And there's blogs that are written by survivors. There's podcasts that we do on our Voice to Change monthly podcast. And it's so important because these crimes, I believe, are the most misunderstood and therefore underreported. So we have to do this for others to understand. Until it happened to me, I did not understand. So I don't blame people for not understanding, but I liken it to breast cancer years ago. If you wouldn't remember, but Betty Ford, First Lady Betty Ford, came forward decades ago, and she said she had breast cancer. At the time, believe it or not, you couldn't say breast cancer. It was a woman's issue. You couldn't say breast, you couldn't say breast cancer. And people were aghast. They were like, oh, why is she doing that? But she wanted to come forward and expose this, that this happened. And think about that. She was a pioneer, she was a trailblazer. And think about now in October, which is Breast Cancer Awareness Month,
Yeah.
everything is lit up in pink. But
Yes.
more importantly, think about early detection and the lives saved because we're talking about it, because we're doing something about it.
Yes.
Well, Jane Doe No More has set out to do that same thing
Wow.
about sexual crimes, to talk about it, to help others to understand it can happen to anyone. It can happen to you or your loved one. And we need to do more to prevent it. We also do self-defense classes for women and girls, and
Really?
all of our programs are at no cost. This self-defense program is amazing. It's with Drew Serrano, who I mentioned before. We have over 6,000 women and girls have gone through our self-defense program. It's a 4-hour free class. There's an education component, and then there's a physical component. And you work with elite trainers who are super experienced, and you get that one-on-one. And it's incredible. It's empowering, and it's just really important.
It
A lot
is.
of mothers and daughters will do it together.
Yeah.
And again, we do them all over the state of Connecticut, and they're free of charge, but registration is required.
Wow, that's just amazing. And we can find all of this information out on the Jane Doe No More website, right?
Yes. And we're also very active on social media. We are on Facebook and Instagram, LinkedIn. Yeah.
Wow. So I'm sure that there's probably many survivors listening to our show today. What would you say directly to them?
For them, I just want them to know that they are not alone, and to please know that there are resources, and that you do not have to just suffer in silence. We also have a Facebook closed group specifically for survivors of sexual crimes. It has grown to over 550 people across the country, and it's called JDNM, which is the acronym for Jane Doe No More, JDNM Survivors. And anyone who is a survivor, female, male, um, can be part of this group if they're so willing. It's a no judgment zone, and people just reach out to comfort one another, to share some tips about how to get through the days if on a dark day, what works for them. And it's important to feel a part of something, because so many of these victims feel alone.
Right, especially, I find a lot of the young high school, college students who, they were in a relationship, but they said no, or maybe they had alcohol or were roofied or
Oh,
something,
yeah.
and they're trying to come to terms with
Oh,
that.
for sure. It's a very difficult thing to process and to come to terms with. And, I think therapy is also so incredibly important. We are not, Jane Doe No More is not a crisis counseling organization, but there are plenty of therapists, and to find that right one that will, help you through this, because you can't do it alone. You really can't, and you shouldn't.
Where do you see the movement heading in the next 5 to 10 years?
Oh, the world is in such a place right now. I honestly don't know, but I can tell you that there are people that will support and believe victims, then you can grow to be a survivor. And I am still hopeful. I started Jane Doe No More as a story of hope, that you can get through some awful things, um, and you can find a path forward, and you can go on to have a wonderful life. And by sharing my story, I know that I'm helping others, and that becomes part of my healing process. So it's full circle. And I just want to create a safer world for my children and my grandchildren.
Mm. If you had unlimited resources, what's the dream project or change you'd bring to the world?
Well, we actually have a dream project right now. We have there was a musical, a theatrical production that was performed at Ridgefield Playhouse in 2019. It was written by Daniel Levine, who is the artistic director at ACT of Connecticut in Ridgefield. He interviewed survivors on our team, including myself, and wrote this beautiful show. And David Friedman, who is a renowned music composer, wrote a beautiful song, and he donated that song and other many songs that were part of this show. We now want to turn this show into a film.
Ooh, that's amazing.
Yeah, and so we actually formed a separate LLC, which is wholly owned by Jane Doe No More, the nonprofit 501(c)(3), and we're getting donations for the film, and we're hoping to raise enough to be able to film this. Um, and
Oh,
that way we can showcase it to the world, to show our story of hope, that that every survivor is different and unique, but they can find a path so forward.
yes, yes, that there is hope, and that's what we all hold on to.
And we have to.
Oh my gosh, what an amazing story. I'm going to lighten it up a little bit now and little fun questions for you. Maybe what's one word that describes you today? Who you are?
Um, I guess persistent is a word, because I know I've heard no a lot. I've been disbelieved, but I keep one foot in front of the other, and I have a strong faith, and so I am persistent in this cause, because I'm so passionate about it, and I know that we so much work needs to be done. So I'm going to keep one foot in front of the other and keep going.
That's how you get through the storm, right?
Yes,
And yeah,
absolutely.
what's a book or a quote that's carried you through?
Um, so I I I was drawn to this statement. It's not so much a book or a quote, but it's a statement that courage is actually fear hanging on a moment longer.
Wow.
Yeah, because so many times I'm like scared I'm like, "Oh my gosh, I can't share this with all these people. I can't." But you just keep going, and you just hang on a moment longer, and that's where the courage comes in.
I love that. I might steal that.
You
I
please
love
do, please do.
wow, courage is fear. Hang
Hanging on a moment longer, and it's true. So you don't have to think, oh wow, they're so brave. No, they have fear too, but they were going forward, they're persevering, and they're determined, and that's what I tried to be.
wow, that's you are. How about a song that lifts your spirits no matter what's going on?
So I mean, I'm an old soul, so I love What a Wonderful World by Louis Armstrong, because despite everything, you can always find wonder. And, with, I have to say, we have now 3 grandbabies, and they're young, and they're just so much fun. And just looking at the world through their eyes and seeing them experience things for the first time, it is a wonderful world. It
Oh,
really is when you look at it, the way you should.
I gotta tell you, I am so inspired by you. Your journey, it reminds us that from deep down comes the greatest strength when you go through some of the hardest things. And no survivor has to ever remain in silence, nor should they, because by sharing our stories and building these platforms, we're allowing these voices to be heard and to be recognized. And we need to tell the world, Jane Doe no more. It's just,
Thank you, Serena, for helping us share our story and our work.
oh
Really appreciate it.
gosh. And I want to just ask one final question of you. What legacy do you hope to leave for survivors and future generations?
I hope I would love a world that is free of sexual assault, of rape, of child sexual abuse, but I know that's probably not likely. But I hope that in the future, people will be trauma informed and will look at survivors and help them on their journey so that they can heal, because they have hopes and dreams just like each and every one of us. And it is up to us as a society to put them on that path to healing after such a horrific event.
Oh, so well said. I mean, it's just beautiful. I always end my shows with a poem from my son Scotty, who's passed, and I try and make the poem be related a little bit to the story. And this is a hard one for with him, but he did write a poem about a girl that he I guess got his heart broken with, and it's called Echoes of Regret. And I just like to share it with you.
Please do.
My brain feels condensed. My feelings are compressed. My body is dense. The energy that once surged through me, refined me, made me me, left. Even though I know what I did was right, why it's feeling so wrong, like an effing fraud. She made me feel safe and warm. I never wanted anyone more. When I had her in my arms, I felt the highest I've ever been, the proudest I've ever been. It felt as if I was flying, never crying. She took away my deepest demons, replaced them with her love and affection. But she'd just be giving others the same attention. Now, I ain't saying that's wrong. She's so great. I couldn't even imagine keeping her all to myself. But she told me she wanted me, just me. And she had me. I thought I had her. But obviously, we didn't have the same vision I see. She whipped my heart with a belt. She couldn't control how she felt. Just like how ice cream melts, she taught me so much about myself. I couldn't be more glad she felt how she felt. I will never be more happy I met her and won't ever forget her. This is from he was 15 years old when he wrote this.
Oh,
And he died by suicide at 16 years old. And I think that he had so much inside of him, and we can all relate to what he was going through. And I try and use my platform so that I can offer hope to people out there. And to our listeners today, I just want you to know that if you are a survivor of sexual assault, there is help out there. Please seek help. You can go to Jane Doe No More's website. She has so much to offer and is just an outstanding pillar of the community and trying to make a difference. And if you want to support her, please go to her website. If you'd like to support our show, SOS Stories of Survivors, please go to sosradio.live. And please remember that survival sparks the soul. Thank you for joining us. And thank you so much, Donna, for being here today.
thank you.